All right, so today what we're going to work on is section 4.1 review. So it's been a long time since we've worked on section 4.1, but this is going to be a review on those concepts. So I would encourage you to write down as much as you need to. Make sure you're pausing the video as much as you need to. I will highly encourage certain parts for you to write down, but ultimately most of this stuff should already be in your notes from the beginning of the chapter. So way back at the beginning of the chapter, we were introduced with the idea of slope-intercept form, right? Slope-intercept form is the most basic way that we write equations and work with equations in algebra. We've been working with them a lot over the last few days, right? So m is the slope value. Slope value is always attached with the x value. When and y-intercept is the value that's usually at the end, right? We can write our equations in the b plus mx form. But really remember that m is slope always attached to the x. B is always that plain number that's left over as the y-intercept. When we graph these, because we're going to graph them today, you always graph your y-intercept first, and then you graph your slope second. So if you need to add any of these things to your notes, remember, write them down, right? Add the things in if you need to. Remember when you're graphing your slope, right? It's always the rise over the run. Rise is the vertical change, run is the horizontal change, right? Again, none of this should be new. Everything should be a review. So if I asked us to write the equation of this line, right? My y-intercept, this is my y line, this is my x line. My y-intercept is that value start at 0 up to, and then I'd find my slope. I didn't label these points beforehand, right? This slope is a negative slope because it's going downhill. And if we counted and used these 2 points on the right-hand side, its rise would be 1 and its run would be 2, and it's a downhill negative slope. So I know on this one, my y-intercept was that positive 2 because that's where it crossed. My slope is a negative 1 over 2 for my slope. So then I would write my equation, negative 1/2 x crosses at a positive 2 for my y-intercept. So again, just to review back on slope-intercept, so we're going to do a couple of different activities real quick. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the slope. It's important, I think, to write the slope formula down, right? So it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? It'll also be on my board, right? But it won't be on the test when we take the test. So you have to have it in your notes or from memory. I always think it's a good idea to label the points before you start, right? x1 and y1 and x2 and y2. And then I can plug them into the formula easier. So the y2 minus the y1. On the bottom, the x2 is negative 6 minus my x1 is the negative 2, so that when I go to simplify 4 minus 2, that's easy too. These two minus signs got to turn into a plus, and then a negative 6 plus 2 is a negative 4. And then we can't leave it like that for one of two ways. One, right, you can simplify 2 over 4 to 1 over 2. And then that negative sign on the bottom, which we don't like to leave. So we like to leave the negative sign out front, or put the negative sign on top. So take a second and see how you feel. I'm going to do one more with you, and then I'm going to have you try 2 on your own, right? So negative 4 minus 3 would go on top. 9 minus 9 goes on the bottom. If I work through this, negative 4 plus a negative 3 is a negative 7. 9 minus 9 is 0. It's been a while. But when that zero's on the bottom, that's that undefined slope, right? So I'm going to pause the video. I want you to see if you can answer those 2 questions and get them correct before we remind ourselves of the last couple things. Okay, so did you do these 2 after pausing the video, right? And simplify the first one to negative 8/5, right? Because we can't do anything with it, but we just don't like that negative on the bottom. On the last one, it would look like this. Turn these 2 guys into pluses, right? 0 over 3, 0 on top, final answer 0. It also might help to say, right, these would be that horizontal line when your slope is 0. This one would be a vertical line if we graphed it. Vertical lines have that undefined slope, right? After slope, right, you're going to be working on writing equations with a slope and a y-intercept, right? So if my slope, remember, you can abbreviate the things when you're taking notes. So slope is negative m is negative 2/3. Slope y-intercept is negative 4. Just plotting them into the equation, dropping them into our formula, right? So when we're writing our slope-intercept equations, it's just y equals slope with the x on it, y-intercept at the end. Remember, side note from before, when we graph these, we start at the y-intercept first, negative 4. I always like to list my two versions of slope, right? So when my slope is negative, the top is negative or the bottom is negative, I don't have room to go down 2. So I actually have to go up 2 and go backwards 3. Up 2, that's it. I don't have room to do any more. And then I can draw in that line, right? Make sure you actually use a ruler. Don't freehand draw it like I'm drawing it. So I want you to pause the video. I want to know, can you do this one? Can you write the equation and can you graph it? And then check back in. So did you write the equation y equals 3x plus 2? Right? Somebody might have done y equals 2 plus 3x, right? You can change the order just as long as the slope has the x on it, right? Always start at your y-intercept of 2. Make your slope, if it's a fraction, right, 3/1. If my slope is positive, they're both positive or both negative. So I do have room to go up 3/1, but I could use my other one, down 3 and backwards 1, down 3. The more slopes we plot, the easier it is to draw in our straight lines. Okay, so there'll be a couple of these on your assignment today. And then the big chunk of your assignment is going to come from here. So can you look at a standard form equation, right? And if you have a standard form equation, can you turn the standard form equation into slope-intercept form? Once it's in slope-intercept form, then can you graph it, right? So it's been a while since we've done this. Turning standard form into slope-intercept form, always get rid of your x first. So if it's a minus 2x, I'm going to add my 2x to both sides. Add my 2x to both sides, plus my 2x. If I add my 2x to both sides, this drops down as my negative. I'm going to put 1y in there. And then I have my 5 plus my 2x. And then I always divide by the number in front of my x. On this one, I'm going to divide all 3 parts. Right? When I divide all 3 parts, it would look like 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. Positive 2 divided by a negative 1 is a negative 2 with the x on it. There would be my slope-intercept equation. And then I can graph it by starting at that y-intercept of negative 5. My slope is a negative 2, right? But I don't have room to go down 2, so I need for sure that other version of slope when my slope is negative, the top or the bottom, so I can go up 2 and backwards 1, up 2 and backwards 1, up 2 and backwards 1, right? I actually have room to plot a lot of points. The more points you plot, the easier it is to draw a straighter line. Okay, so you try one. Can you turn this equation into slope-intercept form? Once it's in slope-intercept form, can you graph it? So pause the video, see if you can do it, and then check back in. Okay, so I'm going to add my 3x. Check your work. Did you add your 3x to both sides? Leaves me with a positive 2y on this side, a negative 8, and a positive 3x on this side. Divide all the parts by 2. Remember, when you're dividing, you're doing all 3 parts. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. 3/2 stays that 3/2, right? When I graph it, we start at the y-intercept, the big number of negative 4. Slope, rise of 3, run of 2, rise of 3, run of 2, right, would be a line that looks like this. Okay, if you do happen to finish things earlier today, what I want you to do is I want you to go into section AA in IXL. So just make sure, right, you're understanding all the parts, and then you can practice any of these things. These are all on slope-intercept, point slope, changing between the two equations, calculating the slope of a line, right? Horizontal and vertical lines, all the different parts are in these sections in AA that are all the ones that are starred would be good things for you to practice if you get your assignment done early today. Otherwise, you should be good to go. So start working on your assignment. Make sure you graph good lines, use your rulers, check your answers if you need to.